Hello everybody. Yes, a student at last. Yes, my name is Thomas Clayton. I'm the president of King's College London Students' Union. A little bit about myself. I arrived here in 2009. I studied history for 3 years, just as a normal student. In March last year, I was then elected as president of the Students' Union. I serve for 1 year, 12 months exactly, full-time. So I don't do it alongside my studies. I take a year out of my studies or I add it on to the end. I'm going to be talking today about collaboration and partnership, the college interface with the Students' Union. Although when I was thinking about this last night, it struck me that in some ways I'm not particularly qualified to speak about it that way around, and what a lot of the stuff I'll be talking about is the Student Union's interface with the college. So just to give you that sort of preamble. So I think what we're going to start with is just sort of an introduction into KCLSU, what we do, why we do, how we do it, who we are, as it were. Then going to look at sort of where exactly that interface is with the college and sort of the opportunities that the college affords us for student input into their affairs. Going to look at sort of the nature of the relationship and sort of why I believe that it's both beneficial for students and also for the college. Then going to look at a case study of a campaign that we ran recently, a successful campaign that we just got word of sort of about a week ago that we've got the funding for, and just to show you exactly how we go about our business, and why we believe that it's added a positive benefit to the college as well as students. Then there'll be some time for questions and answers as well, obviously. Okay, so who are we? The very basics. I probably understand that a lot of you come from very, very different sort of backgrounds. Some of you in your universities will have very, very strong students' unions, so I'm sorry if I'm sort of teaching stuff that you already know. Some of you will come from universities where you don't really have student unions at all. And sort of, well, hopefully I can persuade you to set one up. You never know. Very, very, very basics. We are an independent charity, completely separate from the college. We have our own board of trustees, although we are funded in part by the college and in part by our own commercial services. We operate here in the UK that students are automatically members of their students' union. So we operate on an opt-out basis as opposed to an opt-in basis that you'll see in countries such as Australia. So our vision, and this was part of our strategy for 2011 to 14, is for every student to have a great experience at King's, which is quite ambitious, but nonetheless we think we can fulfill it. So yes, we do that basically in two ways, fun and advocacy, although I would argue that advocacy is in fact fun. But, the fun, first of all. The fun, basically the services, as it were. So we operate a gym, we operate 2 bars, a nightclub, a shop, student centres, social space, 200 different societies and 50 sports clubs. These are all the stuff that the college in theory could, if they wanted to do themselves, but really it's just too much bother, and so they let us do it. Essentially, for instance, with the shop, who better to operate a shop that's designed for students and they want to get students as customers than the students themselves. In all these things that I've highlighted, it's where an essential understanding of the student market is needed that they let the student union take control of the service. So we also operate other services that aren't necessarily fun. So for instance, we operate an academic advice centre. So you've probably heard already today or maybe tomorrow that the college operate a fantastic mental health service where if you've got any problems you can come to them. But of course if you've got problems with the college itself, then sometimes it's quite difficult to feel like you're comfortable going to the college, and that's where you come to the Students' Union to get help, and we guide you through the processes of dealing with the college, and we just have general advocacy in that respect. We also operate some skills workshops to make sure that students have sort of top-up skills beyond just what they learn in the classroom that are actually applicable to the workplace in the UK. So this is all very, very important. It's visible, it's engaging, and in many respects it's what the average student will imagine what the student union is there primarily to do. But in fact, I've always been of the long-held assumption that in fact that's not actually really what we're there to do. It's a bit an interesting byproduct. What we're really here to do is advocacy, to make sure that the student voice is heard within the college. So what we do, as we always say, is we campaign to make positive change for our students both in and out of the college. Although, of course, today I'll be concentrating on inside the college because that's what's most relevant. So, democratic structure. So the formal feed-in is that we have 4 full-time sabbatical officers, 1 president and 3 vice president, a vice president student media and engagement, vice president student activities and facilities, and a vice president of academic affairs. We also then have a student council, which is made up of 44 members, and 2 from each school, which means that we have cross-campus representation. We then have student rep structure with 600 student reps. These are our eyes and ears on the ground, as it were. They let us know what's happening in each individual department. So you should, in theory, have two representatives in each year of each degree course. And we think that's really, really helpful. We don't necessarily own those reps, they're sort of college reps, but we do train them, we're constantly liaising with them, and they are our main input into what we do. There are, of course, also loads and loads of informal methods of input. So anyone can come to a student council session. We have referendums once every term. We have constant polls opening. Any student can ask a referendum question. They can ask a poll question. We also have Rant Week, which is a week where the student officers go around the campus just asking what's wrong, what would you like to rant about, how can we go about and improve it. This year we had 1,000 people fill out a rant card to tell us what's wrong. We also have access to the NSS, so every year all the graduates will sort of go and fill out a survey, and we constantly sort of look at the beginning of the year at those free text comments they can for all our evidence there. We have a massive social media presence, probably even larger than the college, so they're constantly able to tweet us or Facebook us at any time, any day. And then, of course, just our reps as well. We're very accessible. Anyone can have a cup of tea with us whenever they'd like. Just sort of, drop us an email or even a phone call. So I think the point of this is that it's not just about the 4 sabbatical officers. It's not just about our political agenda. And the student unions have moved on a long way from the 1960s where that was the case. And that it's now much more about sort of evidence-driven from all different sources. So we would never, for instance, run a campaign where the idea for the campaign only came from one of those inputs that I've mentioned. We're constantly looking for multiple evidence sources. So, relationship with the college. So overall, absolutely fantastic and very, as I will hope to prove to you today, mutually beneficial. What's interesting is in our leadership, of course, is that once a year it changes. You have completely new leadership structure. And of course, to some extent, that's true within the college with constantly changing people at the top. So what we do is we have quite a solid basis of the relationship. So we'll start, so at the very basic level of that, we'll have a memorandum of understanding, which is a document defining the relationship between the 2 bodies. We then have a student voice strategy, which guarantees student input and consultation into all college affairs. And finally, we have the student charter, which is jointly written by student services and by the student union, which defines the basic expectations that students should have of the college. We then sort of have a place on pretty much every committee that we want to, too many committees in some respects, and we're full voting members in those. We can introduce papers, we can suggest amendments, we can vote, we can attend, we can be absolutely full members, and these are really, really useful to change some of the detail of what the college wants to do. So for instance, this year when we want to make sure that every single student has Wednesday afternoons free, we may well go to a committee and suggest an amendment to one of their policies in that respect. Yes, so this is also quite a good opportunity for us to scrutinise what the college is doing. So the college operates in quite a sort of a detailed committee structure, so everything has to go through the committees, and that's the point where we can take a real look at what the college is doing, and sort of, just sort of, it's almost a fact-finding basis as well. We also have one-to-ones with sort of our opposite partners in the college. So I will have one-to-ones with the head of student experience, the director of students, the vice principal of education, and the principal. They tend to last about an hour, and you have one every month. So you see that we have this constant conversation going on. That's where we sort of will raise concerns, we'll get updates from them as to what they're doing, and we'll give our feedback into that. It's also where we can present some research that we've done or lobby on a particular issue, and especially if the people that we're meeting are a member of a certain committee, it's a fantastic opportunity for us to get them on board to our way of thinking. All college staff are, in our experience, completely happy to have these one-to-one meetings. For instance, when I came in, I was particularly interested in the health centre. I thought that it can improve in a number of ways, and so I set up one-to-one meetings with them, and we're slowly starting to get real development in that respect. They take them pretty seriously. So in the case study I'll present in a moment, I went directly to the principal in one of our one-to-one meetings, and we tend to get progress on pretty much every issue that we take on. We even get some money sometimes. Yes, for instance, the courtesy campaign that we're running at the moment with Gary, a lot of our disabled students came to us and said, we're finding that just people aren't being so courteous anymore. They haven't got much awareness of disability rights. Basic things like people not keeping doors open. We'd like to do something about it. We didn't necessarily have the funds to go about it, but we went to the college. They agreed with us. We showed them the evidence, and it was fully funded by Gary. So, consultation. So this broadly breaks down into two essential areas. Firstly, we have the legal obligations, where in the law the college have to consult with us. So, for instance, with the Officer Fair Access submission that the college present every year, there's a clause that says that the student union have to be consulted, and if they wish, they can present a separate statement as well. We tend to have, with any major development that really affects students at the heart of things, we tend to get consulted. Sometimes it's formal, we'll do a written submission to report. Sometimes it's less, so we'll be invited to a focus group. Sometimes it's just a chat on the phone or in our one-to-one meetings. Case study. Okay, so what I'm going to talk. Yes, so what I'm going to talk to you today, so in the case study, is about our recent library opening hours campaign, which we have conducted over the last month. I hope to show you in this that I really do mean what I say in all the theory that we go through. So for instance, this one, where the actual issue came from, it came from a student council motion which a non-student councillor had put forward, so there's that student input. We use intense amount of evidence, so we noticed that there had been a 30% increase in the number of NSS free text submissions around library opening hours in the last year. When we looked at our Rant Week results, it had in fact increased by 300% over the last year. It's also politically driven, so it was in several of our manifestos when we came to office. And we also noticed that there had been significant change in the working patterns of our students. So they were no longer working the traditional 9 to 5 hours. Many of them were carers, had children. Many of them had to work part-time or were doing part-time courses and therefore couldn't get to the library before it closed at 6 or 7 o'clock. We also, just basically people wanting to work at different hours. So this is the college responding to a change in student patterns that they wouldn't necessarily have identified if they hadn't had a student union to show it to them. So we took it to the principal in one of the one-to-ones. I presented some very, very initial research that I'd done, presenting comparisons to other universities, Russell Group universities, London universities, and multi-campus universities, to show him that we really were well behind the curve on library opening hours. He took an interest and said, allow me to go ahead with writing a full report on the matter. And therefore I went ahead with the campaign. And that, I think, really shows the partnership, because if at that point Professor Traynor had said, no, I don't think this is something we can really go forward, I probably wouldn't have really pushed the matter, because I knew that this really is partnership. The student union can't, of course, force the college to do anything. What did we do? So we started a petition to measure the amount of student support that we had. It gained eventually 1,500 signatures. It was entirely formed by students. So I got students to email in their stories about how lack of library opening hours had affected their lives. We also had the discussion part of the petition, so whenever anyone signed the petition, they could then leave a comment saying whether they thought it was a good thing, and saying exactly what their suggestions were, saying exactly how it had affected them in the past. And also, quite interesting from that we gained a lot of evidence of other universities, because, of course, we had a lot of postgraduate students who had done their undergraduates at other universities saying, oh, I had such a much better experience when I was at Leeds, etc., etc. And we also found that the students actually themselves developed the campaign, so it wasn't just led by the officers. So, for instance, at the beginning, we had no idea that the lack of 24/7 library access during the January exam period was... bugger. There you go. Okay, there you go. So we didn't realise that the lack of January exam opening hours was such an issue for our students. We didn't realise that on Guy's campus, our medical campus, our library opening hours, they stopped their summer exam period on 31st of May, but in fact the medical and dental students continue their exams into July and August, where they had really limited summer holiday opening hours. We didn't realise that students wanted to work so much on weekends and holidays. We thought we didn't really understand that, but they do. And this is especially true when, of course, the college set their deadlines throughout the year so much. So what did we do then? We met then with the head of libraries, so again showing this partnership. We gained his support for the initiative. We also sort of took on his recommendations for how he felt the library opening hours should then move. We also made our own recommendations based on what we knew. And then we got the libraries department themselves to go away and cost it. So they went away and said, this is how much it's going to cost for your first suggestion, this is how it's going to cost for second suggestion, this is the grand amount of total that you can take to the principal for him to sign off on. And that's exactly what we did. We also gained evidence of other comparisons to other universities. We put to the principal the petition, the case studies, all the NSS and Rant Week feedback, and all the comments. And we went back to the principal. He gave us the go-ahead. He accepted all of our recommendations, and he put his money where his mouth is. So it cost him over £1 million a year, but we've now got extended library opening hours. So, and I think what we can really take out of this is these following examples. So it's an example of how the college really do listen to the Students' Union. It's an example of the use of one-to-ones and the importance of building that personal relationship between the individuals involved. It's a perfect example of how we really do use evidence-driven campaigns to both back up our campaigns and also to make sure that's what students really want. It's an example of how we used and involved students in our campaign itself. So it wasn't just the 4 sabbatical officers doing it. So lastly, it was really, we felt, an opportunity for the college to respond to what students want that they wouldn't have had without the Student Union. And also the most important thing is that they were seen to be responding. So we were putting on this pressure, and they could very well, they could give a win. They could say, yes, students, this is what we want. And all the research that we've done shows that when students are consulted, what they're mostly really annoyed about is the fact that when they're consulted, nothing is done. And in fact, they're annoyed more about that than the original issue in which they were complaining about. Why did the college bother? Firstly, I believe that we raised issues that the college just didn't know was there in the past. So for instance, the medical and dental hours example I gave. Secondly, it allows the college to really connect with the students. In some respects, we're the go-to people for student opinion. We help them communicate with a generation that they're not necessarily from, to put it politely. And this is especially true in the 9K generation. So when they're paying so much money, we really do help them to understand what exactly the student wants from the student experience. We also give them a slightly different view on things. We're somewhat removed from the process in which a lot of their policies and agendas are made, and that allows us to really to take a bit of a backward step and to put another view into everything that they do. In some respects, we're their auditors. We also take a bit of a moral stance where the college can't necessarily do so. The rule is that if we can get students on board, then it's probably okay for consumption by the media and the public and so forth like that. For instance, last year we successfully got college to counsel a research project that we felt was not in the best interests of our students or our university, and they took that on board. So this isn't to say that we always get our own way. So sometimes things are just too expensive, or they're too much change, or they result in an embarrassing U-turn or negative publicity. So for instance, last year we were campaigning for all postgraduate research students to get personal tutors, and the college just felt that's just a little too much too fast. But nonetheless, I feel that this is a really positive and constructive relationship that we have. It allows students to have their say if they want to. It's another input and insight into what students want. It allows college to let someone else interpret the very varied student voice. So when you have 24,000 students, it's sometimes a little difficult to just find that one unified voice. And I think the Student Union sometimes gives that. But of course, that is in some respects a little dangerous. And if taken to the extreme, of course, you can't just rely on student unions to speak for students. Sometimes you need to go directly to consult actual students. And I think, therefore, that's why Case LSU is at its most effective perspective when it doesn't seek to represent all students and be a unilateral voice, but in fact merely act as a facilitator in the conversation between college and students. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. My goodness, can I just have a show of hands for Thomas?